In a small, sleepy town where everyone seemed to know each other's business, there lived a boy named Marcus. He wasn't like the other kids at Jefferson High School. While most of his classmates spent their days chasing popularity, or trying to fit into cliques, Marcus preferred the quiet corners of the library. Books were his escape. They took him far away from the noise and chaos of the world outside. But what made Marcus stand out wasn't just his love for reading. It was also the color of his skin and the thick glasses perched on his nose. In a school where being different often meant being singled out, Marcus quickly became an easy target. Marcus had moved to this town 2 months ago when his father got a new job. It wasn't easy starting fresh in a place where friendships felt as old as the trees lining the streets. The first few weeks passed uneventfully. Marcus kept to himself, attended classes, and did his homework diligently. He tried not to draw attention to himself, but that only made things worse. His silence was mistaken for weakness, and soon enough, whispers began circling around him. "Who is this new kid?" some students asked. Others didn't bother asking at all. They simply decided he was odd and unworthy of their time. Among those who noticed Marcus was Derek, a senior known throughout the school as the ultimate troublemaker. Derek wasn't particularly smart, nor was he especially talented in sports, but he had something else going for him: confidence. Or maybe it was arrogance. Either way, Derek carried himself with an air of superiority that made others either fear him or follow him blindly. He ruled the hallways like a king, barking orders at underclassmen and making life miserable for anyone who crossed his path. And now his sights were set on Marcus. At first, Derek's bullying was subtle. During lunch breaks, he would walk past Marcus's table and knock over his tray, spilling food everywhere. When Marcus bent down to pick up the mess, Derek would laugh loudly, drawing the attention of nearby students. Other times, Derek would accidentally bump into Marcus in the hallway, sending his books flying. Each time, Marcus would calmly gather his belongings without saying a word. To Derek, this lack of reaction was infuriating. Most kids cried or yelled back when provoked, but Marcus, he acted like nothing happened. This only fueled Derek's determination to break him. One day during gym class, Derek found a new way to torment Marcus. They were playing basketball, and while most of the boys eagerly joined in, Marcus hung back near the sidelines. Sports weren't his thing, and he knew it. But Derek wouldn't let him stay out of the game. "Hey, Four Eyes," Derek shouted, tossing the ball hard toward Marcus. "Catch this!" The ball hit Marcus square in the chest, knocking the wind out of him. As Marcus staggered backward, clutching his ribs, Derek doubled over with laughter. "What's wrong? Can't handle a little action?" he jeered. The other students laughed along, though many did so uneasily. Deep down, some of them felt sorry for Marcus, but no one dared to speak up. Standing up to Derek was practically unheard of. If you challenged him, you risked becoming his next victim. So they stayed quiet, watching as Marcus slowly regained his composure and walked off the court without a word. His silence infuriated Derek even more. How could someone take so much abuse without fighting back? It didn't make sense to him. Despite the growing tension, Marcus refused to let Derek see how much his actions affected him. At home, however, the pain was undeniable. Every night, Marcus lay awake replaying the day's events in his mind. He thought about the mocking laughter, the cruel words, and the way Derek seemed to enjoy humiliating him. Sometimes tears welled up in his eyes, but he wiped them away quickly. Crying wouldn't solve anything. It would only give Derek more ammunition to use against him. Marcus's parents noticed the change in their son. He used to come home smiling, eager to share stories about his day. Now he barely spoke unless spoken to. When his mother asked if everything was okay at school, Marcus shrugged and said, "It's fine, just adjusting." But deep down, he knew it wasn't fine. Something inside him was shifting, a mix of anger, frustration, and sadness bubbling beneath the surface. Still, he held it all in, determined not to burden his family with his problems. Weeks turned into months, and Derek's behavior grew bolder. One afternoon, as Marcus sat alone in the cafeteria eating his sandwich, Derek approached him with a smirk. "You know," he said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear, "I've been thinking." Maybe you're not just weird. You're probably dumb too. That's why you spend so much time hiding in the library." A few kids snickered, but Marcus didn't look up. Instead, he continued eating, pretending Derek wasn't even there. This infuriated Derek. How could someone ignore him like that? Determined to get a reaction, he leaned closer and whispered, "Or maybe it's because you're, you know." He paused dramatically before adding, "black." The word hung in the air like a dark cloud. For a moment, Marcus froze. Then, ever so slightly, his grip tightened on his sandwich, but he still didn't say anything. Derek frowned, clearly disappointed, and stormed off, muttering under his breath. That evening, as Marcus sat in his room staring at the wall, something inside him snapped. Enough was enough. He couldn't keep letting Derek treat him like garbage simply because he was different. Yes, he was black. Yes, he wore glasses. Yes, he liked books more than sports. But none of those things made him less of a person. In fact, they made him unique and strong. Stronger than Derek would ever be. With newfound resolve, Marcus decided it was time to fight back. Not with fists, but with intelligence and courage. He began researching ways to deal with bullies and realized that standing up to them required more than just bravery. It required strategy. Over the next few days, Marcus started documenting every incident involving Derek. He wrote down dates, times, locations, and details of what happened. He even managed to secretly record one of Derek's taunts using his phone. Armed with evidence, Marcus felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in months, but confronting Derek wouldn't be easy. Jefferson High had a reputation for brushing off bullying complaints unless they were impossible to ignore. Teachers often turned a blind eye, fearing backlash from popular students or their influential parents. Marcus knew he couldn't rely solely on the administration to fix the problem. He needed allies, people who believed in justice and fairness. So he reached out to a few classmates who had witnessed Derek's behavior but never spoken up. Slowly but surely, he built a network of support. As Marcus prepared for the battle ahead, he couldn't help but feel a strange sense of excitement. For so long, he had allowed Derek to control his life, dictating how he felt and acted. But now, Marcus was taking charge. He was ready to face whatever came his way, knowing that he had truth and integrity on his side. Little did he know this decision would change not only his life, but the entire dynamic of Jefferson High forever. And so the stage was set. The quiet storm within Marcus was about to unleash its full force, proving once and for all that strength isn't always loud, it's often silent, steady, and unstoppable. The days following Marcus's decision to fight back were filled with a mix of fear and determination. He knew standing up to Derek wouldn't be easy, but he also knew it was necessary, not just for himself, but for others who had suffered, in silence. Each morning as he got ready for school, Marcus reminded himself why he was doing this. He wasn't just fighting for justice, he was reclaiming his dignity. Still, the weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily on his shoulders. At school, Derek seemed oblivious to the storm brewing beneath Marcus's calm exterior. To him, Marcus was still the same quiet, unremarkable boy he'd been bullying for months. If anything, Derek grew bolder, convinced that Marcus would never have the guts to challenge him. One afternoon, during chemistry class, Derek leaned over and whispered, "Hey, Four Eyes, you smell like old books today. What's wrong? No friends to hang out with?" The other students snickered, but Marcus simply adjusted his glasses and continued working on his lab assignment. Inside, however, he seethed. Every insult fueled his resolve. Marcus spent his evenings meticulously planning his next move. He reviewed the notes he'd taken, ensuring every detail was accurate. He listened to the audio recording of Derek's taunts, cringing at the venom in his voice but finding strength in the proof he now held. But gathering evidence wasn't enough. He needed allies. Though Marcus had always preferred solitude, he realized that tackling Derek alone would make him vulnerable. He needed people who could vouch for him, who had seen Derek's behavior firsthand. His first step was reaching out to Sarah, a girl from his English class. She was shy, much like Marcus, but she had witnessed several incidents involving Derek. After class one day, Marcus approached her hesitantly. "Hey, Sarah," he began, his voice low so no one else could hear. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" Sarah looked surprised but nodded. They stepped into an empty hallway where Marcus explained everything, the bullying, the insults, the humiliation, and showed her the notes and recordings. At first, Sarah hesitated. Standing up to Derek felt dangerous, even if it was the right thing to do. But then she thought about all the times she'd seen Derek torment not just Marcus but other students too. Finally, she agreed to help. "I'll back you up," she said softly. "You shouldn't have to go through this alone." Encouraged by Sarah's support, Marcus reached out to two more classmates, Jamal, a basketball player who had once been Derek's friend, and Emily, a senior known for her outspoken nature. Both had witnessed Derek's cruelty and were tired of staying silent. With their help, Marcus felt a sense of solidarity he hadn't experienced before. For the first time, he didn't feel like an outsider looking in. He felt like part of a team. As Marcus prepared to take his case to the administration, he also worked on building his own confidence. Bullying had chipped away at his self-esteem, leaving him unsure of how to assert himself. So, he turned to books again. This time, self-help guides and motivational stories. He read about people who had faced adversity and emerged stronger, drawing inspiration from their journeys. He practiced speaking in front of the mirror, rehearsing what he would say to the vice principal, Mr. Thompson. Slowly but surely, Marcus began to transform, not physically, but mentally. He stood taller, spoke louder, and carried himself with a newfound sense of purpose. One Friday afternoon, Marcus finally decided it was time to act. After school, he knocked on Mr. Thompson's office door, his heart pounding in his chest. "Come in," called a deep voice from inside. Taking a deep breath, Marcus entered the room and sat down across from the vice principal. Mr. Thompson was a tall man with graying hair and a stern expression. He glanced up from his paperwork, raising an eyebrow. "Marcus, is there something I can help you with?" For a moment, Marcus faltered. Doubts crept into his mind. What if Mr. Thompson dismissed his claims? What if nothing changed? But then he remembered all the times Derek had mocked him, all the pain he'd endured. Summoning every ounce of courage, Marcus began to speak. He told Mr. Thompson about the bullying, the name-calling, the physical intimidation, the racial slurs. He showed him the notes, the recordings, and the names of witnesses willing to testify. By the time he finished, his hands were trembling, but his voice remained steady. Mr. Thompson listened intently, his expression unreadable. When Marcus concluded, the vice principal leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. "This is serious," he said after a long pause. "If what you're saying is true, we need to address it immediately." He promised to investigate further and assured Marcus that action would be taken. Though Marcus left the office feeling hopeful, he couldn't shake the nagging worry that Derek might slip through the cracks yet again. Over the weekend, Marcus shared his plan with Sarah, Jamal, and Emily. Together, they strategized ways to keep the pressure on the administration. They decided to spread awareness among the student body, encouraging others to come forward if they had been bullied by Derek. Word traveled fast in Jefferson High, and soon whispers filled the hallways. Some students expressed admiration for Marcus's bravery, while others warned him not to push too far. But Marcus didn't care. He had come too far to turn back now. On Monday morning, tension hung thick in the air. Derek swaggered into school as usual, completely unaware of the storm clouds gathering around him. During homeroom, he cracked jokes and teased a freshman sitting nearby. But when he tried to harass Marcus, something unusual happened. Instead of shrinking away, Marcus met Derek's gaze head-on. "Leave me alone," he said firmly, his voice cutting through the chatter in the classroom. Derek blinked, momentarily stunned. Then he smirked. "Or what?" he sneered. "What are you gonna do, crybaby?" Marcus didn't respond. He simply turned away, knowing that the real confrontation was yet to come. Throughout the day, he noticed subtle changes in the atmosphere. Students avoided Derek more than usual, and even some of his closest friends seemed distant. It was as if the tide was beginning to turn against him. By Tuesday, rumors were swirling about an upcoming assembly where the school administration planned to address issues of bullying. Derek scoffed when he heard about it, dismissing it as another pointless lecture designed to waste everyone's time. But Marcus knew better. This was the moment he had been waiting for, a chance to expose Derek's actions publicly and hold him accountable. The assembly took place on Wednesday afternoon. The entire student body gathered in the auditorium, buzzing with anticipation. As Mr. Thompson stepped onto the stage, the room fell silent. He began by talking about the importance of respect and kindness, urging students to look out for one another. Then, without warning, he shifted gears. Recently, we've received reports of unacceptable behavior occurring within our school, he announced, his tone grave. Specifically, instances of bullying and harassment that will not be tolerated under any circumstances. Derek shifted, uncomfortably in his seat, sensing that something was off. His unease grew when Mr. Thompson mentioned that investigations were underway and consequences would follow. Just as Derek started to relax, thinking he might escape unscathed, Marcus stood up from his seat near the back of the room. All eyes turned to him as he walked steadily toward the stage. "Excuse me, Mr. Thompson," Marcus said, his voice clear and confident. "May I say something?" The vice principal nodded, stepping aside to let Marcus take the microphone. For a brief moment, Marcus scanned the sea of faces staring back at him. Then, taking a deep breath, he began to speak. "I'm Marcus," he said, his words echoing through the auditorium. "And I've been bullied by someone in this room for months. This person has made my life miserable, spreading hate and fear wherever they go. But today, I'm here to tell them, and everyone else, that I won't stay silent anymore." Gasps rippled through the crowd as Marcus recounted specific incidents involving Derek, naming him directly. He described the verbal abuse, the physical intimidation, and the racist remarks. As he spoke, Derek's face turned pale, his bravado crumbling under the weight of exposure. Students exchanged shocked glances while teachers scribbled notes furiously. When Marcus finished, the room erupted into murmurs. Derek jumped to his feet, pointing angrily at Marcus. "You think anyone believes your lies?" he shouted. But before he could continue, Mr. Thompson intervened, ordering Derek to leave the auditorium. Two teachers escorted him out, leaving behind a stunned audience. In the days that followed, the entire school buzzed with talk of Marcus's bravery. Some students praised him openly, while others marveled at how he had managed to stand up to someone as intimidating as Derek. Even Derek's former friends distanced themselves from him, unwilling to associate with someone labeled a bully. Suspended, and facing possible expulsion, Derek's reign of terror came to an abrupt end. For Marcus, the victory was bittersweet. Yes, he had exposed Derek and brought attention to the issue of bullying, but he also knew that the scars ran deep, not just for him, but for countless others who had suffered in silence. Determined to create lasting change, Marcus founded a peer support group aimed at helping victims find their voices. Through workshops, discussions, and community events, he inspired others to embrace kindness and reject cruelty. As weeks turned into months, Marcus noticed a shift in the culture. At Jefferson High, bullying became less frequent, replaced by acts of. The days after the assembly at Jefferson High were unlike any Marcus had experienced before. For so long, he had been invisible, just another face in the crowd, someone Derek and his friends could mock without consequence. But now, everything had changed. Students who once ignored him or laughed at his expense began approaching him with respect and admiration. Some even apologized for not speaking up sooner. Teachers treated him differently too, nodding approvingly whenever they saw him in the hallways. It was as if a switch had flipped, and suddenly, everyone realized that Marcus wasn't just the quiet kid. He was a leader, a symbol of courage and resilience. But fame, even in a small high school setting, came with its own challenges. While many students supported Marcus, there were still whispers from those who sided with Derek. They called him a snitch behind his back, accusing him of ruining Derek's life. Others claimed he was exaggerating the situation, trying to make himself look like a hero. These comments stung, but Marcus refused to let them shake him. He reminded himself why he had spoken out, not for glory, but for justice. Still, the negativity weighed on him, making it hard to focus on his studies or enjoy the newfound attention. Despite the backlash, Marcus pressed forward with his plan to create lasting change at Jefferson High. With Sarah, Jamal, and Emily by his side, he launched the peer support group he'd dreamed of forming. They called it Voices Unite, a name chosen to reflect their mission, giving a platform to those who felt voiceless. The first meeting took place in an empty classroom after school, with only 5 members attending. But Marcus didn't mind. He knew that meaningful movements often started small. At the meeting, Marcus encouraged everyone to share their stories. One girl talked about being teased for her weight, while another boy confessed to hiding his love for art because his classmates thought it was weird. Listening to these stories, Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. He realized how widespread bullying truly was, and how deeply it affected people. By the end of the session, all 5 attendees agreed to spread the word about Voices Unite. Slowly but surely, membership grew. As the weeks went by, Marcus threw himself into organizing workshops and activities aimed at fostering empathy and understanding among students. He invited guest speakers, including counselors and former victims of bullying, to share their experiences. During one particularly powerful session, a young woman named Lisa spoke about overcoming years of cyberbullying. Her story resonated with many students, prompting several of them to open up about their own struggles. For the first time, Jefferson High began to feel like a community rather than a battleground. Meanwhile, Derek's absence loomed large over the school. Suspended indefinitely and required to attend counseling sessions, he rarely showed his face on campus. When he did return briefly to collect his belongings, he kept his head down, avoiding eye contact with anyone. His closest friends had abandoned him, realizing they didn't want to be associated with someone labeled a bully. Even the teachers who had once tolerated his antics now treated him with cold indifference. Derek's fall from grace was swift and brutal, leaving him isolated and humiliated. Marcus occasionally thought about Derek, wondering what he was going through. Part of him felt sorry for the guy. After all, no one deserved to be completely ostracized. But another part of him couldn't forget the pain Derek had caused, not just to him, but to countless others. Marcus decided that while forgiveness might come someday, it wasn't something he owed Derek right now. Instead, he focused on helping those who were still suffering, channeling his energy into building a better environment for everyone. One afternoon, Marcus received an unexpected visitor. During lunch break, it was Jamal, who had recently become one of his closest allies. "Hey man," Jamal said, sitting down across from Marcus. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus nodded, curious. "Do you ever regret standing up to Derek? Like, do you think maybe you went too far?" The question caught Marcus off guard. He set down his sandwich and thought for a moment before answering. "I don't regret it," he said finally. "What Derek did was wrong, and someone needed to stop him. Yeah, it's tough dealing with all the attention and criticism, but I'd rather face that than stay silent and let him hurt more people." Jamal nodded slowly. "That makes sense. I guess I'm just worried about you, you know? You've taken on a lot of responsibility since this whole thing started. Are you okay?" Marcus smiled faintly. "Honestly, some days are harder than others, but knowing that we're actually making a difference keeps me going. And besides," he paused, glancing around the cafeteria. "For the first time, I feel like I belong here. Like I'm doing something that matters." Jamal grinned. "Well, you're definitely making waves, bro. Keep it up." Encouraged by Jamal's words, Marcus continued pouring his heart into Voices Unite. The group quickly became a safe space for students to express themselves without fear of judgment. They held poetry readings, art showcases, and even a talent show where participants performed songs, dances and skits inspired by their personal journeys. Each event drew larger crowds, proving that creativity and vulnerability could bring people together in ways traditional discipline never could. Teachers noticed the positive shift in the school's atmosphere and began incorporating anti-bullying lessons into their curriculums. Mr. Thompson, the vice principal, praised Marcus for spearheading the movement and promised to implement stricter policies against harassment moving forward. Even the principal, Mrs. Carter, acknowledged Marcus's efforts during a morning announcement. "We owe a debt of gratitude to students like Marcus," she said, "who remind us that kindness and courage can transform our world." While Marcus appreciated the recognition, he remained humble. He insisted that the credit belonged to everyone involved in Voices Unite, not just him. "This isn't about me," he told the group during one of their meetings. "It's about all of us working together to create a better school. If we keep supporting each other, there's nothing we can't achieve." By spring, Jefferson High felt like a different place altogether. Bullying incidents dropped significantly, and students seemed happier overall. Friendships formed across cliques, breaking down barriers that had once divided the student body. Even the seniors, notorious for their aloofness, joined in the spirit of unity, organizing events to welcome underclassmen into the fold. Marcus watched it all unfold with pride, knowing that his actions had sparked a ripple effect that extended far beyond his initial goal. Still, Marcus understood that the fight against bullying wasn't over. There would always be new challenges, new battles to face. But for now, he allowed himself to celebrate the progress they had made. On the last day of school, he stood outside the main entrance, watching as students streamed out, laughing and chatting excitedly about summer plans. Sarah approached him holding 2 popsicles. "Here," she said, handing him one. "You deserve it." Marcus accepted the treat with a grin. "Thanks, Sarah, for everything." "No problem," she replied. "You've done amazing work, Marcus. Don't forget to take care of yourself, though. You've earned a break." As they stood there, enjoying the sweetness of the popsicle and the warmth of the sun, Marcus reflected on how far he'd come. From the quiet, unassuming boy who had tried to blend into the background to the confident leader inspiring change, he had grown in ways he never imagined possible. And though the road ahead might still hold obstacles, Marcus knew he had the strength to overcome them. Not alone, but with the support of those who believed in him. In that moment, surrounded by friends and filled with hope for the future, Marcus realized something profound. Standing up to Derek hadn't just changed his life. It had changed the lives of everyone around him. And that, more than anything, was worth fighting for. As summer approached, Marcus found himself reflecting on the whirlwind of events that had transformed his life and Jefferson High over the past few months. The school year was coming to an end, but the impact of Voices Unite lingered like a fresh breeze sweeping through stale hallways. Students who once feared speaking their minds now openly shared their thoughts and feelings. Teachers noticed fewer conflicts in classrooms and more collaboration among students. Even the cafeteria, once a battleground for cliques, buzzed with laughter and conversation from mixed groups sitting together. But despite the positive changes, Marcus knew there were still shadows lurking beneath the surface. Not everyone at Jefferson High supported the movement he had started. Some students resented him for exposing Derek and believed he had gone too far. Others simply didn't care about kindness or empathy. They clung to old habits, mocking those who tried to make a difference. Marcus understood that true change took time, and not everyone would embrace it willingly. Still, these lingering doubts weighed heavily on him as he prepared for his junior year. One afternoon, while cleaning out his locker before summer break, Marcus heard footsteps behind him. Turning around, he saw Jamal standing there, holding a basketball under one arm. "Hey," Jamal said, smiling awkwardly. "Got a minute?" "Sure," Marcus replied, closing his locker. "What's up?" Jamal hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I just wanted to check in on you. You've been carrying this whole thing on your shoulders for months now, and I know it hasn't been easy. How are you holding up?" Marcus shrugged. "I'm okay, I guess. Tired, but good. It feels like we've made some real progress, you know? Like maybe all this effort is paying off. That's awesome, Jamal said, nodding. But don't forget to take care of yourself, man. You can't pour from an empty cup. Marcus chuckled softly. Thanks, Jamal, I'll try. The truth was, Marcus hadn't been taking much time for himself. Between running Voices Unite, keeping up with his studies, and dealing with occasional backlash, he rarely had a moment to relax. But deep down he felt a sense of fulfillment he'd never experienced before. Helping others find their voices gave his own life purpose, and that was worth every late night and stressful day. A summer of growth over the summer, Marcus threw himself into expanding Voices Unite. He reached out to local community, centers, churches, and youth organizations, seeking partnerships to spread awareness about bullying prevention. One Saturday morning, he attended a workshop hosted by a nonprofit called Stand Together, which focused on empowering young people to combat social injustice. There, he met other teens from nearby schools who were working on similar initiatives. They exchanged ideas, shared resources, and promised to stay connected throughout the year. One of the most impactful moments came when Marcus listened to a keynote speaker named Rachel, a former victim of severe bullying who had turned her pain into advocacy. She spoke passionately about the importance of resilience and self-worth, urging the audience to remember that their value wasn't determined by what others thought of them. Her words resonated deeply with Marcus, reminding him of his own journey, from silence to strength. Inspired by Rachel's story, Marcus decided to host a community event at Jefferson High when school resumed. He envisioned it as a celebration of unity and courage, a place where students, parents, and teachers could come together to discuss ways to build a kinder, more inclusive environment. With Sarah, Jamal, and Emily's help, he began planning the details: guest speakers, panel discussions, interactive activities, and even a mural painting project symbolizing diversity and acceptance. Back to school. When fall arrived, Marcus returned to Jefferson High with renewed energy. His peers greeted him warmly, and several students thanked him for starting Voices Unite. Some even asked how they could get involved. Encouraged by this enthusiasm, Marcus kicked off the new school year by announcing plans for the upcoming community event. Flyers went up around campus and announcements were made during morning assemblies. Slowly but surely, excitement began to build. However, not everyone was thrilled about the event. Rumors circulated that some students planned to disrupt it, claiming it was too preachy or unnecessary. Marcus ignored the negativity, focusing instead on ensuring everything ran smoothly. On the day of the event, hundreds of people showed up, students, parents, teachers, and even local news reporters eager to cover the story. The atmosphere was electric, filled with music, laughter, and heartfelt conversations. During the opening speech, Marcus stepped onto the stage, his heart racing. Looking out at the sea of faces, he felt a surge of gratitude, not just for those who had supported him, but for the opportunity to create something meaningful. Thank you all for being here today, he began, his voice steady despite the nerves. This isn't just about stopping bullying, it's about building connections. It's about recognizing that we're all human, with our own struggles and strengths. And it's about choosing kindness over cruelty, every single day. The crowd erupted into applause, and Marcus couldn't help but smile. For the first time in a long time, he felt truly seen, not as the quiet boy who used to hide in the library, but as someone capable of inspiring change. Facing Derek, again, a few weeks later, Marcus encountered Derek for the first time since the assembly. It happened in the parking lot after school. Derek was leaning against his car, smoking a cigarette, his expression unreadable. When he spotted Marcus, he straightened up, tossing the cigarette to the ground. "Marcus," he said, his tone neutral. "Derek," Marcus replied cautiously, unsure of what to expect. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Derek sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, I just wanted to say, what happened back then, it was messed up. I shouldn't have treated you or anyone else the way I did. I'm sorry." Marcus blinked, taken aback by the sincerity in Derek's voice. Part of him wanted to dismiss the apology outright, but another part recognized the weight of Derek's words. "It's not me you need to apologize to," Marcus said finally. "There are a lot of people you hurt. Maybe start with them." Derek nodded slowly. "Yeah, you're right. I've got a long way to go, but thanks for hearing me out." As Derek walked away, Marcus stood frozen, replaying the conversation in his mind. He didn't forgive Derek, not yet, but he acknowledged that redemption was possible, even for someone like him. Everyone deserved a second chance provided they were willing to earn it. Building a legacy. By the end of the school year, Voices Unite had become a cornerstone of Jefferson High's culture. Students looked forward to its events and teachers praised its impact on the school's overall climate. Marcus, however, remained humble, always deflecting praise onto the group itself. "This isn't my legacy," he told Sarah one evening as they worked on organizing the final meeting of the year. "It belongs to everyone who believes in making things better." Sarah smiled. "Maybe so, but you're the reason it exists. Don't sell yourself short, Marcus." He grinned, shaking his head. "Let's just focus on finishing strong, okay?" And finish strong they did. At the final meeting, dozens of students gathered to celebrate their achievements and plan for the future. As Marcus looked around the room, he felt a profound sense of pride, not just in what they had accomplished, but in the knowledge that their work would continue long after he graduated. In that moment, Marcus realized something important. Standing up to Derek had been the spark that ignited a fire within him. That fire had grown into a movement, proving that one person's courage could inspire countless others. And though challenges lay ahead, Marcus knew he and Jefferson High were ready to face them head-on. With hope in his heart and determination in his step, Marcus closed the chapter on one incredible year, excited for whatever came next. By the time Marcus entered his senior year at Jefferson High, he had become more than just a student. He was a leader, a mentor, and a symbol of resilience. The changes he had sparked within the school continued to ripple outward, touching lives in ways he could never have imagined. Voices Unite had grown into a thriving organization with chapters in neighboring schools, thanks to Marcus's efforts to share resources and strategies with other students eager to combat bullying. His name was synonymous with courage, and, though he didn't seek fame, it followed him wherever he went. But as much as things had improved, Marcus knew that challenges remained. Bullying hadn't disappeared entirely. It was too deeply rooted in fear, ignorance, and insecurity for that. However, what had changed was the response to it. Students no longer tolerated cruelty silently. They spoke up, reported incidents, and supported one another. Teachers took complaints seriously, and administrators implemented stricter policies to hold offenders accountable. Even parents were more involved, attending workshops and discussions about fostering kindness and empathy at home. Jefferson High wasn't perfect, but it was evolving, and Marcus was proud to be part of that transformation. A new chapter as senior year began. Marcus found himself reflecting on how far he'd come. He remembered the boy he used to be, the quiet, reserved kid who preferred books over people, who believed staying invisible was safer than standing out. That version of himself felt like a distant memory now. In his place stood someone confident, compassionate, and unafraid to use his voice, not just for himself but for others. Still, Marcus couldn't ignore the bittersweet reality of his final year at Jefferson High. It was a time for goodbyes, for saying farewell to teachers who had believed in him, friends who had stood by his side, and a community he had helped shape. While he looked forward to college and new opportunities, leaving behind the world he had fought so hard to improve left him with a pang of sadness. One crisp autumn morning, as Marcus walked through the familiar hallways, he spotted Derek sitting, alone on a bench near the courtyard. Derek's presence at school had been sporadic since his suspension, but lately, he seemed to be making an effort to return. He kept to himself, avoiding the groups of students who once idolized him, and spent most of his time reading or sketching in a notebook. Few people noticed or cared, but Marcus did. Seeing Derek reminded him of their confrontation years ago and the apology Derek had offered in the parking lot. Curiosity got the better of him, and Marcus approached cautiously. "Hey," he said, keeping his tone neutral. Derek glanced up, startled. Recognition flickered across his face, followed by a mix of emotions Marcus couldn't quite decipher. "Oh, hey Marcus," Derek replied awkwardly. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Marcus gestured toward the empty space beside Derek. "Mind if I sit?" Derek hesitated before nodding. "Sure." Marcus lowered himself onto the bench, studying Derek carefully. Gone was the cocky swagger and arrogant grin that had defined him back when he ruled the halls. Instead, Derek looked tired, his hair unkempt, his clothes rumpled, his eyes shadowed with regret. It was strange seeing him like this, almost vulnerable. "So," Marcus began, unsure of what to say. "How have you been?" Derek shrugged, staring at the ground. "Not great. Things are different now, harder. People don't look at me the same way anymore." Marcus nodded. "I get that. Change isn't easy." "Yeah," Derek muttered bitterly. "Tell me about it." After a pause, he added, "I guess I deserved it, though. What I did to you and everyone else, it was messed up. I know that now." Marcus studied him closely, searching for any trace of insincerity. But all he saw was honesty. "It takes guts to admit that," he said finally. "Not everyone would." Derek snorted. "Guts, please. I lost everything, my friends, my reputation, even my spot on the basketball team. All because I couldn't keep my mouth shut or my hands to myself." His voice cracked slightly, betraying the pain beneath his tough exterior. "I don't expect anyone to forgive me. Hell, I don't even forgive myself half the time. But I'm trying to do better, you know? Baby steps." Marcus felt a twinge of sympathy. Whatever Derek had done, he clearly carried the weight of his actions every day. "That's all anyone can ask for," Marcus said gently. "Just keep moving forward. You'll figure it out." Derek gave him a small, grateful smile. "Thanks, man. For listening, I mean. Most people wouldn't give me the time of day." "I think you'd be surprised," Marcus replied. "People might not trust you yet, but they'll see the change if you stick with it." They sat in silence for a while, watching as students streamed past, laughing and chatting. For the first time, Marcus realized that Derek wasn't the villain he had once imagined him to be. He was human, flawed, broken, and desperate for redemption. And while Marcus wasn't ready to call him a friend, he respected the effort Derek was making to rebuild his life. Graduation day months passed quickly, and soon it was graduation season. The entire senior class buzzed with excitement as they prepared for the ceremony that would mark the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. On the big day, Marcus stood among his classmates, dressed in a navy blue cap and gown, feeling a mixture of pride and nostalgia. As he scanned the crowd, he spotted his parents beaming with joy, Sarah waving enthusiastically, and even Jamal giving him a thumbs up from afar. When his name was called, Marcus stepped onto the stage to receive his diploma. The audience erupted into applause louder and longer than for any other graduate. Cheers echoed throughout the auditorium as students rose to their feet, clapping and whistling in admiration. For a brief moment, Marcus froze, overwhelmed by the love and support surrounding him. Then, smiling broadly, he accepted his diploma and raised it high above his head, a silent tribute to the journey that had brought him here. After the ceremony, Marcus lingered near the entrance, shaking hands and posing for photos with friends and family. As the crowd thinned, he noticed Derek standing off to the side, holding his own diploma loosely in one hand. Their eyes met, and after a moment's hesitation, Derek approached. "Congratulations," Derek said, extending his hand. "You earned it." Marcus shook his hand firmly. "You too. I hope whatever comes next works out for you." Derek nodded, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thanks again for everything. You didn't have to give me a second chance, but you did. I won't forget that." As Derek walked away, Marcus watched him disappear into the crowd, wondering what the future held for both of them. Whatever it was, He knew they would face it differently than before, stronger, wiser, and more determined to leave their mark on the world. Moving forward, in the months following graduation, Marcus embarked on a new adventure. College. He chose a university known for its strong community service programs, eager to continue advocating for kindness and inclusion on a larger scale. Though he missed Jefferson High and the friends he had made there, he embraced the opportunity to grow and inspire others in new ways. Back at Jefferson, Voices Unite thrived under new leadership, ensuring that its mission lived on long after Marcus's departure. Students continued hosting events, leading workshops, and spreading awareness about bullying prevention. Teachers credited Marcus for laying the foundation of a kinder, more empathetic school culture, one that would endure for generations to come. Years later, as Marcus reflected on his journey, he realized that standing up to Derek had been the catalyst for everything that followed. It wasn't just about defeating a bully. It was about finding his voice, building connections, and proving that strength lies in unity. Through every challenge, triumph, and setback, Marcus had learned that true power comes not from dominating others, but from lifting them up. And so, as he stood on the brink of adulthood ready to tackle whatever lay ahead, Marcus carried with him the lessons of his past. The quiet storm within him transformed into a beacon of hope, guiding others toward a brighter, kinder future.